This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
It's late, it's loud, and it's live from London. It's the Late Late Show with your host, Toby Doncaster, and tonight we think about creativity in the classroom. Has it been sacrificed in the name of standardized tests?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Monday Late Late Show. Tonight I have Pete Dunford and we're going to talk about creativity. Is it dead, or can we still bring it back into the classroom? Now, to me, creativity is a loosely defined term. I always imagine it to involve creating posters, writing magazine articles. But is creativity more than deft use of coloured pencils, flip charts and a word processor? Pete, what do you think? What's your opinion?
Well, I got to say, I'm certainly hoping that it's not dead, because otherwise it's going to be a really short conversation, Toby. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, when you asked me to come onto the show and to talk about creativity, I stood there thinking, what is creativity? And I think very often as teachers we can easily get swamped by this idea that creativity really does equate to being an artist, to being able to draw things and make things look pretty and glitter and pretty coloured posters and all that sort of thing. But I have to say, we've got to get away from that. You know, if you're in that trap, it's a dangerous one to be in. It's all about, to me, creativity is all about trying to look at things in different ways, to find ways of expressing ourselves, if you like. And
Sure.
Some people that's artistic, and some people it's really not.
I mean, tell me a little bit about yourself, just to give our audience a brief idea. So, who are you? What do you do? And where do you come from?
Well, I'm based in South Wales,
All right.
Bridgend, so halfway between Cardiff and Swansea, and I work at Bridgend College. I'm a science lecturer and actually teach in an animal care department, so I tend to teach the sciencey parts, the biology, anatomy and physiology, that kind of stuff. I've been there, I was just trying to work it out earlier, I've been at that college for 17 and a half years and teaching for just about 18 years, so it makes me sound very old, I feel, when I say that sort of thing.
No, not at all. But so, I mean, thinking about it, okay, so you teach biology, so there must be a lot of drawing and colouring in, no? Keeping within the lines?
Wow, that's the thing. To be honest, I try and avoid it because personally I am a terrible artist.
Okay.
I have a sister who is a phenomenal artist. She was blessed with artistic skills and I was blessed with science skills. We're chalk and cheese, and I've always struggled with that drawing element. In fact, when it came to my science lessons when I was growing up, I remember dreading the microscope lessons.
Okay,
we were
yeah.
always told you got to draw exactly what you see down the microscope, as though that was easy. And you'd get this demonstration, and they would draw it, and you'd look at it, and you go, "Well, I see how you did that," and I'd try it, and it would kind of look, I don't know, just like something had died. So,
Well,
yeah.
literally, it had died.
Well.
You know, that's how they got it under the microscope in the first place. Yeah, no, I could see that. You know, drawing for some of us. I mean, I'm not a great drawer, and I suppose technology has a can help quite a bit in that respect, because you can use tech to draw the image for you and then label it. But it presumably it involves a different part of the brain. You know, you're thinking imaginatively. I mean, I find myself talking to myself when I'm working as well. Um, I, what about you? I mean, what sparks your creative juices, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's music.
Okay.
I gotta have some music on. Uh, but I think that's the wonderful thing about creativity, isn't it? That actually it's all different.
Mm,
Nobody is creative in the same way, which is right and proper. The very nature of creativity is that you're doing something to express personality, if you like. And for me, yeah, I got to have the music on. I got to be in the right frame of mind to be creative. And actually, I think sometimes we forget that our students are exactly the same. It's all very well us planning lessons, trying to build some sort of creativity in there, but one thing I've always found is you try and do an amazing creative lesson, and you can
mm.
be sure that there will be some people in that room who are just not feeling it, and they're not interested because they're not in the right place to be creative at that point. And you can't force
No,
creativity.
you've talked about that, and I'm thinking of that dreaded term, learning styles.
Oh,
Uh, I know,
dagger to the
but
heart.
I know, but I mean, is there something to be said about this? That okay, there's me saying, right, I teach GCSE English, so I'm thinking, okay, I want you to, read this passage, say, and draw a scene from the passage, and let's see what we come up with. Some students will get it, and some won't. So, am I supposed to, you know, pin down who's good at drawing, or who would be better off doing a mind map of the scenario, or who would be doing a graphic organizer, or who would be doing bullet points? Do I have separate tables, some with colored pencils and some without? How
I
do I
think
organize this?
Yeah, I think freedom is definitely the way to go. It's giving those options, isn't it? Allowing people to be prepared to take risks and say, look, it's okay. Do
Mm,
what kind of works for you, so long as you're on task and you're kind of focused on something. Then, let's work at your pace. I guess it's a little bit like working with Lego.
right.
Now, those people who know me know I absolutely love Lego. It is one of those things. I wish I was a millionaire because I could actually buy far more Lego and have a house big enough to have it in. But I'm not, so I have to kind of live it through my son at the moment, and he gets the Lego sets, and I just try and play along occasionally. Um, but there's two main ways of playing with Lego. You've got the instruction book that's there, or you can just get the Lego bricks and you can start building whatever you like. And actually, there's a time for both, and both are creative. If you get a Lego set, and personally, I'm a rule follower. I like having those set of instructions and
Mm, mm.
building it, and that's great. But if I'm in a really happy, creative place, I might well want to just sit there and just build random stuff, and that's okay. At different times, you're going to be in a different place. And some people like to follow the rules and then start to improvise off that, but build a spaceship and then see how you could change it up. And
Mm.
really, our students are the same. Some of them are going to need some structure, they're going to need some rules to be able to follow, some ideas, some templates, if you like, to get them started. And others will just want to run with it. And I think when going back to your classroom analogy of, what do we do? How do we get these students to be creative together? Is recognizing that actually they're not all going to be in the same place at the same time.
No.
And so having some sort of structure available for those who their headspace just isn't there, then they're not able to just focus on being inspirationally creative at that point. They just want to get through the day. And so they need to
Mm,
follow the
mm, mm,
structure
mm.
and be guided on their way to do it and still achieve something and get a sense at the end of the day that actually it wasn't a wasted lesson. But you've got other
Mm.
students who are kind of they're straining at the leash. They want to be able to just express themselves and they're in a really great place and we want to let them loose and let them do that. Um, do they need to sit on their own little tables to do that? I don't know. I like the idea
Mm.
actually of having materials at the front of a class and just saying, knock yourselves out, guys. We've got all sorts here. Come and use what you want to, but then just go and sit with your friends who might be in a different place, but actually that's where some of the collaboration can work. That's where you get these different ideas bouncing off each other potentially. It's giving the environment, I guess, for
You
these
know
things to
what?
work.
You've just given me a light bulb moment. I'm picturing, my back to my GCSE English class again. So we've just done the Great Fire of London, and we might have, I'd say, as you said, different materials, and say, okay, in this group, I'd like somebody who could make a mind map of the Great Fire of London.
Yeah.
The important events. Where did it happen? How did it happen? Where did it spread to? The important figures like Samuel Pepys and I can't remember the mayor now, but apparently he did a very poor job of looking after the city at the time of the fire. So we've got that. Okay, so I want somebody to make a mind map, and I want somebody else, to draw a scene from the mind map, um, and I want somebody to do a radio, just like we're doing right now. So I want you to do a radio show to say, I'm at the scene of the Great Fire of London. This is what's happening at the moment, and I want it to be recorded. And we could have a video,
Nice.
you know. So
Get some Lego bricks in there, get them building a scene from it.
we
Get
had
Lego
to
in
bring in
wherever
the
you
Lego.
can.
We had to bring in the Lego, didn't
Of
we?
course I have.
Yeah. So there's that. I could see that as being sort of like the productive stage of the lesson, and I'm seeing it as So once that's happened, we can have people grade the different aspects. So it's almost like what I'm trying to say. You could have somebody producing like what's it called? Not a soundboard. I'm thinking of. So if he's going to present the story,
Yep.
we're going to have a news broadcaster broadcasting live from the scene of the Fire of London. So somebody could do storyboard. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they could do a storyboard as well. So you'd have 5 or 6 people all engaged in different aspects of the production, so to
Yeah.
speak.
But I think you touched on something really interesting there, Toby, because you're saying about grading at the end of it and kind of talking through what people have been doing. And I think we've got to recognize that whenever you're doing anything creative, there is such an element of risk there.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you really need to cultivate that culture in the classroom that it's okay to make mistakes, that we recognize it's going to be risky for everybody. In any level of creativity, you're always going to get people who've got that view on your work. And actually, if the students are really scared of that, you're not going to get the creative element out of them. The best work's always going to be when there's rapport, not just with you as the teacher, but in the class as well. That feeling that actually they could take the risk, they could be creative, express themselves in some way, and not be criticized for that, possibly critiqued, but not criticized, and you have to take it in the right way. It's something I think with some groups it works really well, and other groups, we may have people listening who actually they've tried being creative, and you actually just find it falls flat because the students just aren't there. They're too scared of what people are going to think if they actually express what they really want to show.
So I'm going to let this out to the audience, to anybody who's listening. What are your creative stories and your creative do's and don'ts? We've already had one where we're talking about critiquing a piece of work. And Pete, how would you define that? How would you explain that? Idea of critiquing rather than criticism or judgment.
Yeah, well, I mean that's something that's got to be explicitly taught to the students, really, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Right at the beginning, if you start saying to people, right, I want you to look at what your mate's done and tell him what you think of it.
I
You're
can
going to
see
get one of
trouble
two.
looming.
Absolutely, you're going to get one of two options. You're either going to get I've been told I can tell him what I think, and they're going to be brutally honest And that's a painful experience. I'm sure we've all had people be brutally honest with us, and we'd rather that they weren't. But likewise, I often find my students, when I ask them to give feedback, I do this actually with my H&D students, when they give presentations, they have to give a presentation by themselves on anything they want, okay, just for 5 minutes, and they'll get feedback from everybody else in the class to try and get them to break down this idea of how do we give feedback, what do we give it on, and making the point that yes, we want, you know, how it could be improved, but we also need to talk about the positives as well. But what I usually find is actually they're too far the other way. They're so scared of offending that actually they are overly gushing. And that's almost just as unhelpful, because then you end up with people going, well, there's nothing wrong, there's no way of improving that. It was perfection. Quite clearly it's not. So yeah, trying to give this idea of we need a balanced view. You know, you need to look at it and say, okay, what do I genuinely like about what they're doing? Even if you think, wow, that wasn't a great piece of work, there's something in there, something they've done which they will have done well. And finding that and starting with that, and then getting the students to say, okay, and one thing that could be improved for next time. You know, let's not make a big list of 10 or 15 different action points, just one thing that could be improved for next time. And then as you're going through the year and you build on that and you keep revisiting this idea of giving that peer feedback, then you're going to see that development and the trust starting to come in there. And people can say, well, actually, you know, last time I suggested you do this. That's the thing you've done really well this time. And you get that kind of follow-up feedback.
Empowering education with Easy4U, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy4U, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easy4u.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out! Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.apps4good.co.uk. appsforgood.org.
And we're back, and we've been talking about creativity and how to promote it, also thinking about feedback and how learners can give feedback to each other without it being critical, but rather offering feedback that allows them to build on what they've already created, building trust and developing skills. But Pete, I was just thinking, there's also the aspect of the teacher being able to model creativity. Now, we started this session by saying that you and I both can't draw.
Yep.
What other ways have you demonstrated creativity in your lessons?
So I think it's going back to the idea that creativity is all about just kind of expressing yourself and taking risks. And I think when students see that you're taking risks for yourself in the lessons, I think they start to feed on that. At the end of the day, as a teacher, I said to you at the beginning, I've been teaching for 18 years, and one of the things that I've always wanted to do in the classroom and always tried to do is to experiment. Not from the science point of view, but just in terms of the teaching point of view, that it's playing around and finding new ways of doing things. And although I
Sure.
can't draw, that's kind of how I express my creativity, if you like. It's looking at a lesson and going, okay, I'm bored of that already. I want to change it up. I want to come up with new ways of trying to approach this and new tasks that the students can do, but being really open with the students about it. I think my students would probably agree. I'm a bit of a feedback junkie. I do
Right.
things in the class and I'm straight back to them and say, well, how did that go? What did you think? Was that worthwhile? Should I do it again? And so we try and have this open dialogue, but it means that they are really, really clear that they're guinea pigs all the way through. It's. But I make it clear to them, what you tell me is going to affect whether I do this again next year, if I do it in the same way, if I'm going to change it. And so it gives them some of the ownership of their lessons as well, and the ability to say to me, Pete, that was rubbish. Can we just not do that again? Or actually, Pete, I really liked that, and there's various online tools that, we all use some of these quizzing tools that are out there, and sometimes you get feedback where they go, yeah, that was amazing, and other times you get ones where they say, nah, just move on. And it's lovely and it's great, and it goes back to that building the environment really. And I think, if you're asking the students to offer feedback to each other, really we need as teachers to model that they're giving feedback to us as well, and be really open to that and really encouraging it.
Now, I mean, one creative exercise that I do, I actually produce videos about various aspects of GCSE English, and it might be, for example, writing about a character and how you would do that and how you would think about it, or how to create a mind map and how to draw on that. And what I've noticed is that I stand in the front of the class and explain something. My students won't pay any attention. But as soon as I say, this is a video I produced, oh, we're now interested. Oh, have you got a YouTube channel, sir? Oh, I've just found you. Oh, I'm now watching you.
You're famous.
Infamous. But yeah, but it's interesting how that sparks attention, but but you've made me think, well, what I have to do now is to say to them, right, what I'd like to see is you take on an aspect of English and deliver a short podcast about it, or deliver a short video about it, how and then explain how I do it. So I sit down, I brainstorm what I'm going to be talking about. I think of some ideas. I write out a script for myself. From the script, I boil it down into bullet points. and that's how I do it. And I have to be very clear. That's how I do it.
Mm,
It's not necessarily the way that it works for you. You might want to create
absolutely.
a mind map and then take it from there. You might not need a script, or you might not need, notes in order to deliver what you want to talk about. You might be able to go straight off the cuff.
Yeah.
Different people are able to do that. And I think it's important that as teachers, we sort of recognize that, it's going back to what we were saying right at the start. People um, are creative in different ways, but also people can express the same sort of creativity, but do it in different ways. Get
Mm,
to that point in different ways.
absolutely. And they need to feel that it's not wrong to do that. I quite agree.
Um, I must confess, I mean, the one thing that I'm scared of, is reading a text, showing the students a text and saying, "What do you think of this text?" Okay, now it's my turn as the teacher to model that for you.
Mm, yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to start writing, and it's live writing on a board, so
Mm,
it's like a live sort of analysis of a piece of text. And I've thought about the text and I've got some brief ideas, but I haven't create. I can't create notes, so to speak, in front of them. I'm live writing on the board, and it's like, oh, I hope this goes on. I hope this goes on. I hope this goes on. I'm running out of steam. Okay, turn to the class. What else could I add to this? What do you? But also saying to them, what do you think of what's been produced here? Is it good enough? Do you think it's a passing grade? What could be added to it? What needs to be added to it? So there's a lot there, you know, and
And I think
yeah,
what you're saying there, is a great way of fostering creativity in itself, because you're empowering the students by bringing them into the process and getting them to support you as you're trying to model that behavior. You're acknowledging with them, yes, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing, I'm modeling it for you, but your opinions are valid. Your contribution is really valid here. It's not I'm going to show and you're then going to do. It's I'm going to start and then we're going to carry on together and then we can have a go trying to do it by ourselves.
yeah, definitely. Um, and it's quite interesting how in most of the classes that I teach, learners are still, even though I've done that, modeled it and so on, they still turn around and say, can you give me some sentence starters? Can you give me some ideas? And I'm like, oh, well, this time I'm actually going to let you think about it for a moment. Think about it for a moment, see what comes up,
Yeah.
as a sort of confidence builder. Whereas in another time, I might say, actually, it's a bit tough. That one's a bit of a tricky question. Let me give you a little bit of assistance there. So I think creativity, you mentioned a word and it's stuck with me ever since, which is improvisation. And I think creativity allows you to improvise in the class, and it makes it more dynamic
Mm.
as well, rather than, okay, let's open up the textbook, let's go to page 6, let's do the exercises, and, let me bore you to death for the next hour and a half.
Yeah.
Let's
Absolutely.
bore each other. Yeah.
And sometimes I have to say, when you improvise in front of a class, sometimes that can be some of the best lessons. When you just see when the class arrives, you got your plan, and the class arrives, and you think, you know what, I've just had a brainwave, and it's not what I've planned, but we're
Hmm.
just gonna roll with it, and we're just gonna see, and I'm gonna let the students know that I'm improvising, and we're just playing around together and seeing what happens. And you can have some phenomenal lessons like that, but it's
Hmm.
giving yourself the freedom. But again, it's risky. It could totally backfire. So you do want to have built some of that rapport, I think, with the students, so that you can feel safe doing it with them as well. There are some classes I can think of that I wouldn't necessarily feel safe improvising so much because I'm not sure they have got my back all the time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
some that
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
absolutely could, and we could spend the whole year improvising as long as we get everything done at the end. But yeah, it's good fun when you get to do that.
So Here's a question it doesn't necessarily link. Oh, it could link. I don't know. Let's
Ooh.
play around with the idea. Oh, we're improvising. Oh, there you go. Creativity in action. We, you and and teachers in general, the issue, I think, the fundamental issue that we face is that we always have to prepare learners for standardized tests and exams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. No matter how much fun we're having in the classroom, the learners are going to have to knuckle down and do something summative at the end.
Yeah.
How do we balance creativity with standardized testing? And bearing in mind that a lot of times there's creative thinking also relates to cognition, doesn't it?
Mm.
It
Yeah.
allows the brain to think freely, to make connections, to come up with ideas, to come up with light bulb moments.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Oh, it's a really tough one, isn't it? Because it's not even just the tests that I think are the hardest thing, it's the time limit that goes
Yeah.
behind it. That's the bit that I always struggle with. You can have no end of wonderful ideas about how you'd like to teach a subject, and ultimately it boils down to you got an hour and a half, get on with it. And it is so tough. I mean, it's got to come down to how you are delivering the material in the first place. Um, I guess the ideal from a creative point of view is trying to do some form of project-based learning where the students are getting the opportunity to really play around with a problem rather than just having to learn bare facts.
Mm,
That
mm,
they're trying to solve something, and always trying to solve problems. The only way to do it is to be creative, and it's not necessarily going to be some beautiful poster that's being produced, um, but the solution will require creativity, whatever it is they come up with. And so, that is kind of the best way, but I have to say, I struggle. On a day-to-day basis, when particularly in biology, you think, well, you need to learn the body systems. How do you do that in a project-based learning kind of way when we've got such limited time? Um,
mm, mm,
and
mm,
so sometimes it comes down to, okay, well, actually, we're going to learn about this, and I'm going to give you an activity, but I'm going to give you a choice board as to what we do for half the lesson.
okay,
And
sure.
I found that that's worked really well with my learners when trying to revise for exams, because it gives them a chance to be creative in how they are assimilating that information, how they're going to revise later on, what they need to focus on personally. And so I would create a choice board where there's going to be some kind of quizzes that they could be doing
Mm,
online, or they could be doing some cutting and sticking, and kind of some colouring aspects sometimes, and labelling. I'm a big fan in biology of that. Just colouring in diagrams and having to label as you do it and getting familiar is a great way of learning anatomy.
mm,
Or it might be, I always put on the choice board, one of the choices is to come and have a conversation with me, so that if there's something they're stuck on and actually they just need a bit of teacher support, they can get that.
mm,
Um,
mm, mm,
but trying to build in, I'm going to go back to Lego again. It's giving those different structures and saying, look, within these boundaries, I'd like you to be doing something around this topic that you are in a place to do, that you're in the mood for, and therefore it's going to work for you, because actually trying to do some big class quiz will work for maybe two-thirds of you, but a third of you aren't interested. Your head's somewhere else at the moment, and you just need a bit of mindfulness colouring in, and it's biology
mm,
related.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and yeah, I find that trying to build creativity into that aspect, you're still working towards the assessment. We've still got the learning outcome in mind, but
mm,
it's done in a short time scale. But going back to the project-based learning, I've been really blessed the last couple of years, um, been in further education and animal care. We've got a module on our animal care courses called Investigative Project. specialist project. Sorry, the old module used to be investigative. This is specialist project, and specialist project is great fun because essentially they are learning project management skills. They need to produce
Oh,
a
wow.
proposal, they need to do an action plan, they need to do their project, and then they need to evaluate it at the end. And it's one of those modules that can be taught really dryly, and lots of the students want to default to writing a report. Not because that's what they actually want to do, most of them hate writing, but because that's what they've been conditioned to do. They've gone through
Sure.
school, and when they're told to do a project, they think, oh, okay, I've got to write a report about this. And the first half term, I get to break them, and it's wonderful. And we just go through design thinking with them and tell them, they are allowed to do some writing if they want to for their project, but they can't write a report. It's the one thing they're not allowed to
Oh,
do.
all right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
if they could write a newspaper article if they wanted to on something, they could produce a leaflet if they wanted to. But I've also had students who have created apps. And, we're not programmers, we're not coders. So I show them how to use Google Slides and to link the slides together when they click on a button so that they can create this prototype for an app. And I've had
Oh,
some
okay.
wonderful creative solutions to some of the problems. But we always start with, right, okay, think of a problem, just something related to animal care that you wish you could do something about. And then start brainstorming, and we go through post-it notes everywhere, and we start magpieing ideas off each other. And it's all very open. They do a bit of brainstorming. I put some music on. It's all very Bridgerton, pop music, just classical, and they cringe constantly through it. But I insist on having it on nice and loud. But we have a really good laugh about it, and we try and break down some of that fear and some of this conditioning that's there, that actually doing a project is really dull and really boring. And we talk about, well, what do you want to do in the future, and some of them have produced wonderful videos, like you were saying, on YouTube. Some of them have started their own
Mm,
YouTube channel. Lots of them are doing TikTok videos on,
yes.
how to care for a particular species of animal that they particularly love themselves and they're experts in. They've been keeping pets for ages. They know how to do it properly now. And so they're producing these TikTok videos to try and show other people how to look after these animals and to
Wow.
really make it a difference. But once you break out of that mold that they're in, they are really, really keen, and the creativity you see is phenomenal. It's lovely.
Hmm.
But there's
Hmm.
always some people in the class who don't get it, who
Hmm.
don't want that creativity because it's scary. And so, as I say, they still resist me and they want to write a report. And eventually I do relent. If that's where they're at and they insist that they're going to write a report, I'm not going to fight them forever. It's in the assessment that if that's what they want to do, they can do that. But I don't let them for the first kind of 6 weeks go with that idea. It's only if they are still persistent that, no, that's what they want to do. That is their happy place. I'm like, fine, you do that then.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, I think it's a blessing that the assignment allows for different forms of self-expression
mm,
in order to get in order to get your point across or to express the ideas that you have. I mean, yeah, I'm facing the same thing. Learners have to produce a presentation, and they say, can we do a PowerPoint? And I'm like, oh no, can't you do anything else? And I've lost it. I actually had a learner come in, and he brought in a basket of fruit, and he went, he started his presentation by going, right, who wants an orange? Who wants an apple? Who wants some grapes?
oh,
And
I love
people will
it.
go, yeah, I'll have some. I'll have some of that. I'll have some of that. And I'm like, where are you going with this? And then once he distributed all his fruit out of this basket, he goes, I'm here to talk about my Saturday job, which is I work on a fruit market at the Western International Market near Hayes. And I went, ah, ha, 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 you
That's awesome.
didn't. You didn't. So everybody's chomping away at this fruit while he's talking about, what he does, what time does he wake up,
What a
the
great
type of
idea.
fruit does he sells, you know, and he just kept going on and on and on. And then he said, any questions? And the group erupted. They wanted to know more. And I don't, it was almost like, crikey, how do I bottle this? You've just been talking for, the thick end of 10 minutes. How do I bottle what just happened and sell it to the rest of the class?
It's a
breaking
great way
the
of
mold.
making a presentation come alive, isn't it?
Exactly. Make it come alive and then talk about it. But breaking the mold. And I think we need to talk about that.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionises the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC features an article on teacher retention, with a piece leading with the headline, "Would a 1:40 p.m. Friday finish stop teachers quitting?" The article reports on troubling statistics which reveal that the number of empty teaching posts in England has more than doubled in the past 3 years, according to recent official figures. Whilst politicians have pointed to rising teacher numbers, some have acknowledged that government's figures also show that targets for recruiting teacher trainees have been missed for 9 out of the 10 previous years. This is despite raises to starting salaries. Teacher recruitment has featured in election campaigns, with Labour promising 6,500 more teachers and the Lib Dems also saying they would invest in more. Giving teachers an early finish on a Friday or a day off every other week have been amongst ideas schools themselves are considering. The article features comments from one former teacher who recently left the profession. She said in the report that leaving to protect her physical and mental health after experiencing anxiety had been the best decision she'd ever made, and that this was despite support being offered by her school. She was also overwhelmed by workload. Annual figures released by the Department for Education at the start of June cover the academic year 2023 to 24. They show that on top of rising vacancy rates, the proportion of state school teachers leaving the sector is at its highest since 2010, with 39,971 teachers leaving. This represents 8.8% of the workforce and does not include those who have retired or died. A report in May by the Education Select Committee said recruitment and retention was a persistent challenge. Early Friday finishes have been trialled by a school in London. Lessons begin at 9 a.m. and finish at 4 p.m. Monday to Thursday, so no learning time is lost. The head teacher said the response from staff and students was positive, and it had helped the school support well-being for all. Full details of the report can be found on the BBC News website. In Northern Ireland, the Belfast Telegraph reports on higher education. It says that students in Northern Ireland who are about to leave for higher education feel they have been left at a disadvantage when applying for university places in the Republic of Ireland. The Secondary Students' Union of Northern Ireland has raised concerns about what it calls double standards north of the border. This year, students in Northern Ireland are sitting A-levels with a full return to normality and no mitigations for COVID-19 in grade awarding. In contrast, the Leaving Certificate marking has not returned to normal since the pandemic. The union has called this unjust and said it disadvantages those in Northern Ireland competing for the same university places. SSUNI President Ellen Taylor said that structural barriers to Northern Irish students will deepen inequality, and that the Irish government and Northern Irish ministers needed to work together to ensure young people's futures. The Guardian reports on a survey of children in the UK and Ireland, which reveals that they are reading fewer books than they did last year. The 2024 What Kids Are Reading report surveyed more than 1.2 million pupils and showed a 4.4% decrease in the number of books read by pupils. According to the study, the decline in reading is particularly acute in secondary schools and affects the difficulty of books being read as well as the volume. The survey showed pupils read progressively more challenging books until Year 6, but after that the difficulty level tended to plateau until Year 9 before a sharp drop in difficulty of books read by older secondary pupils. The research began in 2008, and this year is the first year there has been a decline in the numbers of books read, apart from during the first year of the pandemic. Explanations for the decline have included the drop in school attendance, with the number of pupils persistently absent increasing. Finally, the Washington Post features a story on Max the cat, who has been given an honorary doctorate from the Vermont State University. The 5-year-old tabby roams campus, socialises with students, and even attends lectures. He also has his own staff email address. Having attended the campus for 4 years, he has been awarded the doctorate in honour of his work. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
And we're back talking about creativity in the classroom. I was just saying, what I would like to see in the new school year, really, Pete, is I would like to break PowerPoint and worksheets and embrace creativity and, encourage learners to express themselves. So like I say, well, you're going to present something rather than reaching for the laptop and building a PowerPoint, you get them to do something else. So really, what do you think about stepping out of the comfort zone? What tips do you have to give to our listeners?
God, there's a huge area, isn't it? Stepping out of your comfort zone. I mean, I actually do a whole lesson on that for my H&D students. I mentioned,
no, really?
I do, yeah. I mentioned earlier about the getting them to do presentations that they then critique and give feedback to each other. But before I do that, I model a few techniques to them. We talk a little bit about the power of stories in presentations, and how we can try and convey these messages, and I kind of break down for them a little bit about how I am as a teacher, because when I was actually studying to be a teacher, I was terrified of being in the classroom. Absolutely terrified of it. I hated it. And I'm sure I'm not alone, actually. I think there are probably lots of teachers who can possibly um, kind of recognize themselves in that. And I used to find myself on my teaching practice. I had some lovely classes. They weren't scary themselves, but you know what it's like when students have a student teacher in there with them. And if you're not confident, those students eat you alive. Even the nicest group will absolutely devour you. And and I used to really struggle. So I'd go in there and I'd be really nervous, and I wouldn't be kind of talking clearly, and and
Yeah,
it was all very staid and boring because I was just panicking the whole time. And it,
sure.
it got to a point where it was kind of like I've either got to sort myself out here or drop out the profession, because this isn't going to work. Um, and I don't really know where I got it from. I'm sure I must have seen somebody or read something, but essentially I realized I needed to start acting,
Sure.
that I had to stop being me in the classroom,
Hmm, hmm,
because
hmm.
me couldn't hack it. I'm too introverted. I don't like talking to people. I just like kind of sitting there, not being the center of attention. And so I started thinking, okay, well, if I was confident, if I'm going to pretend that I'm somebody who's confident, then how would I be acting? And so even when I'm sat here now, my arms are flapping all over the place, because actually that's what I realise somebody who's confident does, is they use their arms when they're
Yeah,
talking, and
yeah.
their voice goes up and down. It doesn't just talk in a really static monotone voice. You've got that intonation in there. Um, and you make eye contact, and when I'm doing this, I'm there looking straight at the students and making really clear, confident eye contact with them, and I'm
Mm, mm,
strutting
mm,
around the
mm.
the room. And I said to them, what I used to do is I would stand outside of the classroom, and I would psych myself up, and I'd put my shoulders back, and I'd lift my head up high, and I would walk through that door with real confidence, and I would pretend to be a good teacher. And they're kind of looking at me like I'm a little bit crazy, and they don't really believe me, because they've seen Pete, who's been teaching for 18 years. They don't see
Yes.
that Pete, who was there 18 years ago,
Mm,
struggling with all this. And these days, Teacher Pete is me. It.
exactly.
I'm quite happy to take on that persona and recognize that actually that is part of me. And when I'm in that mindset, I can do these things. I was talking to my wife before coming on air with you, and going, I'm slightly terrified of doing this, and I'm sat there thinking, oh, am I going to be able to say anything? It's kind of like me going to a party. I'm just going to sit in the corner, and I'll let Toby do all the talking, and actually you can't get a word in edgeways.
No,
But
I can't.
but
But
it's
that's all
because
right.
I'm sat here in teacher mode, and
Sure. Yeah.
to
No,
get out of
I
my
can relate
comfort
to that.
zone, I needed to act like the person I wanted to be.
Mm.
And once I was in that acting space, I could carry it on, and my teaching practice went really well, and I had the confidence then to be a teacher and just keep living that lie on a professional basis. And I go home and I'm still me. And it's not that I'm not expressing myself. So I say, it's just that more confident aspect of me. I've learned to push myself out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
But then you start drifting back in,
No,
and that's
sure.
the thing about the comfort zone. It's really attractive, isn't it, to just kind of go, oh, you know what? Yeah, I can teach now, but I think I'm just going to stop there. And it kind of got to maybe 2018, 2019, early part 2019, and I started thinking, I am a little bit too static here,
Okay, sure.
and I bumped into Scott Hayden from Basingstoke College,
All
at
right.
a at an event, and he was talking about the Google Innovator um, thing that he'd been doing, and it sounded amazing. And he'd gone to Denmark for it, and I thought, oh, well, that sounds sounds like I could quite enjoy doing that, but that's a bit scary. And it was kind of at that point that I thought, you know what, I need to push myself out of the comfort zone. And I applied to do the Google Innovator Academy in Sweden. And it was a real kind of, that's really scary. I've got to do a video and I've got to stick it up onto YouTube for the world to see. And,
Yeah.
it's
I can buy
totally
that.
exposed.
Yeah, I mean, for me, stepping out of my comfort zone, I need to prepare. And I'm almost like a swan, as it were. Calm and
Beautiful.
unruffled at the top, and then beautiful, but then scrabbling like mad on the bottom.
Yeah.
And the scrabbling like mad is I'm constantly thinking and puzzling over and saying to myself, what is it that I'm actually going to do? And then, maybe an hour before or 2 hours before the event, whatever that's going to be, whether it's the classroom or even, a radio show, I sit down and it starts coming out of me. The ideas start coming out, or I make notes, or I start writing up a script, or, I make up a lesson plan, or I start producing materials, and I think, I know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And then I can walk in. And I didn't realize that it needs part stress, if you like. There needs to be a little bit of pressure, a little bit of thinking, and a little bit of action all at the same time, and not to leave it to too late. Otherwise, I just go into overstress mode and I just can't think straight. It's more like, okay, I've just got to I've got to time manage myself a little bit. So that comes into play as well. But yeah, I get the walking on stage, because I was on a theatre production, and that was exactly that. I memorized my lines until I got them word perfect, and then everything else came into play, so that when I actually went on stage, I didn't feel a thing. I was actually just delivering my lines and playing the part and actually enjoying myself. And I found that I was enjoying myself. And I think, you were talking about, okay, I'm a teacher, but there needs to be that enjoyment to keep the motivation going, doesn't there?
There does. And, I think the important thing about stepping out of your comfort zone is that that's when great things happen.
Yes.
The creativity that we've been talking about today, it doesn't come if you stay in your comfort zone. It comes from actually taking those risks, pushing yourself out there, and seeing what happens. And some of the things that come about from just stepping out your comfort zone and giving things a try. And if you fail, learn from it, move on. People don't actually care too much. We care far more than anybody else. But yeah, it's the gateway to opportunity, isn't it? But you can't access that from your couch.
Do you know what? I think you just mentioned one last thing there, which is we care about making mistakes too much. And I think that's teacher brain for you. Teachers care about what we do, what we say, how we act, and how we perform in front of a live audience. And, we're a live audience. Well, in my case, 23 hours a week, I'm out there, I'm performing, and at the same time, I'm trying to be aware of what's happening with my audience. I'm trying to, gain a rapport with my learners. I'm trying to assess whether they've actually learned anything,
Yeah.
Tough gig, but I wouldn't give it up for anything else. Yeah. Well, that brings us to a close, Pete. It's been wonderful talking creativity with you. Has really got my my juices flowing.
Excellent. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. You take care now. See you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.